Greetings. My name is Simba Bey, doing business as Derek McCauley. I first heard about the Standard Form 181 um, listening to Chief Nanya around 2018, spring of. I had been active for years in Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity at Ball State University. And in my journey as a fraternity member, the members never dealt with commercial matters. These commercial matters weren't talked about. There was no documentation being floated around about basically getting free out of this system commercially through these contracts that we were in. Shortly into the 90s, I became a fraternity member in 1987. Into the 90s, I started hearing about more science. I got into the more science. I had some dealings with Pleasant Bay. Talked to him in length many times. I also came across Taj Tariq Bey. Had talked to him in length many times. Even had Taj come to Indianapolis to speak on several engagements, him and Brother Abdullah. There was a lot of learning that I got from that. One of the key aspects that I didn't get was the process to go through getting out of these adhesion contracts we were in and recapturing our commercial property from this system that we're tied to. I stayed in the more science temple, well, I stayed under the teachings of Taj till maybe early, mid 2000s. And then I heard about Temple 13 in Baltimore. I went through the naturalization process through Temple 13, and it was a learning experience because there was classes involved. In-depth classes on issues pertaining to more science, the teachings of Noble Drew Ali. The main thing that I did not get out of that was the commercial aspect of these adhesion contracts once again, and the recapturing of the quote-unquote straw man from the system of bondage. There was an issue that I had later on, and I turned to Temple 13 to help me out of that issue, and they basically had no answer for it. I started doing extensive research on my own late into the 2000 teens, and I've been active in this so-called more science teachings or the sovereign teachings for about 18, 19, 20 years now. Around 2018, I came into contact, me and my brother, with Chief Nanya. We had heard him on YouTube a few times. And based on me filing many documents in courts, me going through court system on different occasions, filing UCC financing statements, actually being active myself in commercial matters, having some successes and some failures. Listening to Chief Nanya, it really hit home what I was missing. I had seen a lot in terms of dealing in the commercial world. But the fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, Pleasant Bay, Taj Tariq Bey, More Science Temple 13, they weren't touching on the surface of a lot of the things that Chief Nanya was talking about. One in specific was even using the mail system. Sending mail out the proper way, documentation. I had spent many dollars filing things in the newspaper. And after listening to Chief Nanya, we found out about Calameo, which is a really, really simple way to publish something. It's fast, it's quick, it's easy, and the commercial aspect of listening to the teachings of Chief Nanya, like I said, it really hit home, and it was filling the holes of the things I was missing. In specific, the UCCs, the hard copy information that he talked about on current events that was going on, people like Byron Allen's lawsuit, in specific Sophia Stewart, who me and my brother have close contact with. Sophia Stewart was involved in a high-profile court case where she, quote-unquote, won her rights to her movie Terminator and The Matrix. But in winning, she's been unable to collect on her suit, which I kind of find hard to really fathom. Liquidation, should be automatic after you win a suit. And from my understanding and my teachings, the UCCs are one of the way that you can liquidate something, especially if you have a court order winning a court case. The second main aspect on why there was failures from Byron Allen and from Sophia Stewart and many, many other people was because of their failure to recognize the standard Form 181 and to reclassify themselves properly. There appears to only be one person that can actually send you through a step-by-step process of understanding how to do it and why you're doing it. And that happens to be Chief Nanya, Yamasee Nation. And I began really, really delving into this standard form. It's a simple one-page form. It's a standard form 181. It's backed by Title 42 United States Code, Section 2000 E16, and it's the ethnicity and race identification form, as you can see here. It's put out by United States Office of Personnel Management, Guide to Personnel Data Standards. It asks for simple, specific things on there. Last name, first name, middle name, social security number, and birth date, month and the year. If you go down the page, question 1, it asks, are you Hispanic or Latino? Of course, the answer for me would be no. On the second question, it says, select the racial category or categories with which you must closely identify by placing an X in the appropriate box. Racial categories consist of American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and white. The classifications for each category in specific, it lists each of the 5 categories, or 4 out of the 5 categories. It lists as a person having origins in any of the original peoples. Ironically, when you get to the Black or African American, it says a person having origins in any of the Black racial groups in Africa. Well, upon my research, I found that there were no Black racial groups in Africa. And I've always looked at myself as the original people, so how could I not be original and all other people of the world are the original people? So now, I almost put in a trick bag. I went back and looked at my birth certificate, as me identified as Negro. Social Security Administration, I'm listed as a Black. Driver's license, I'm listed as Black. Most of or all of my contracts, I'm considered Black. And according to the Dred Scott case, black has no standing at law. So it was Chief Nanya who pointed out that under the racial categories, I would fall under the American Indian, of course, and white. White being a person having origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa, with Queen Europa being a woman of a melanated complexion. I am one of the original people of North Africa and Europe and the Middle East. And American Indian, why my grandparents were of the Cherokee Nation here in the so-called America, so I would identify myself as American Indian. So I would check American Indian and white. So thanks to Chief Nanya, I've went through the process of the Standard Form 181, which was an extensive process of filing documents, reading specific instructions, and attending to the webinar on a weekly basis, filing documents. Chief Nanya, unlike any other person that I dealt with in their teachings, went step by step with you. He was always available by phone to talk to, and he answered or he returned phone calls. And the Empress was very specific on her questioning and her answers, and you were given specific instructions and you were expected to complete those instructions. So my experience on the SF-181 with the Yamasee Nation of Moors and Chief Nanya has been a fulfilling one. I am glad to call myself white, and I would suggest people hurry up and get on the bandwagon to understand how and why you do this. And in order to do that, you have to come through Chief Nanya. So I'm signing off, and Abi Gador, Abi Gador, Abi Gador.